Today on the podcast, I'm thrilled to welcome a good friend, John Zimmer, who is a globally recognized public speaking coach. He's also the author of the blog Manner of Speaking. With over 20 years' experience as a corporate lawyer, John has a unique ability to be able to combine precision of legal argumentation with the art of persuasion and communication. His journey from the boardroom, the courtroom, to the stage has equipped him with profound insights on what really works as great communicators and negotiators. It's not just to convey information, but also to be able to inspire and influence people in an authentic way. I'm really pleased to have John on the podcast today. Welcome, John Zimmer, to Empathy at the Table. Hello and welcome to another edition of Empathy at the Table. I'm your host, Tony Anagor, and today it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you a good friend, a fellow coach, and an all-round just great guy, John Zimmer. Please, John, welcome to Empathy at the Table. And how are you feeling today, John?
Tony, great to be here. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everybody. I've been looking forward to doing this interview with you for some time, so it's good to finally make it. First resolution of 2025 kept.
Yeah, I'm glad we kept that in the diary. I think it's probably taken us about 9 months to get to this date. So
We've been busy. In the meantime, I see we're in a neck and neck race to see how much we can lose on the top and how much gray we can add on the bottom. So that's good to see.
Well, listen, this gray on the bottom, right? I had to pay for it in advance and pay for it in full. So I'm not sharing it with anybody. John, welcome. Would you like to share just a little bit about yourself for our listeners, people who may not know about you?
Well, sure. It's as a lawyer, as I suspect most people know, you represent clients. They come to you, and you defend their interests in court. Typically, I worked in civil cases. I didn't do much criminal law. Although there were times when clients in the environmental field, when if they had a factory and there was a spill, they might be prosecuted for an environmental offense. Then we would defend them in front of the court. I always loved the idea of the law. It's a shame that when you think of professions, lawyers typically rate at the bottom of the scale in terms of how the public views them. But when you think about it, it should be a noble profession because you are upholding the rights of your clients. So I was always fascinated with that, and that got me intrigued to go into the law. And that's a little overview of how it was.
So share with us the kind of negotiations that you were involved in as a litigator. I mean, typically when we think about litigators, we think about hard-nosed, tough people who go in there and their job is to just rip the guts out of any specific case and leave no stone unturned. Was that your experience?
There were lawyers who were like that, but I'm happy to say that I think most lawyers had kept it at a real professional level. Of course, you have to defend your client's rights in court against the adversary. That's the job. But the best lawyers against whom that I would fight in court, they were always very good friends because we would go at each other hard in court, but always focused on the issues at hand. The interesting thing is in a litigation dynamic, there are many relationships. There's you, for example, if you were a lawyer and I'm a lawyer, and we're each representing a client going against each other in court, you have the relationship with your client, you have your relationship with me, and to a lesser extent, there's your relationship with my client, although it's not a direct one. It's only in court. You would never speak to my client directly. And in terms of negotiation, clients would come to our office, we sit down, they go through the case, and then sometimes, as a lawyer, knowing the law, knowing the facts and understanding the facts of the client, there would be a negotiation with the client because sometimes you had to tell a client, hey, your case is kind of weak on this point, and you might want to consider settling. And many times they would listen, they would take the advice, but sometimes for various reasons, they wouldn't. They would want to pursue the case. And that was their right. And if they decided to pursue the case, notwithstanding your advice, you had to do your best to represent their interests in court. So it's an interesting dynamic when you think of negotiation.
Yeah, I've seen these. I know Hollywood really does, dramatize these things, but I've seen these kind of movies where lawyers kind of really go at it in court. And then the moment they're outside, they're in the bar drinking together, laughing and joking. I mean, how real is that?
That's very real. Well, the Hollywood part about the client comes into the office and 2 days later they're in court, that is not real at all. It takes weeks, if not months, before you get before a judge. But the idea of two lawyers, going at it in court and then afterwards going out for a drink, that happens all the time. I mean, these are, when you practice law, these are your colleagues, these are your peers. And again, coming back to the example of if you were representing a client and I was representing a client and they were having a fight, that might be the case today. But next year, we might have a big corporate client come to us and say, hey, we need a lot of lawyers, and you and I might be on the same side. So you don't want to break, you want to preserve those relationships. And it's fun as well, because when two lawyers, when I would go at it hard against another lawyer in court, we could have a good laugh about it after the case was done.
Yeah, this is one of the things that we teach on our course of emotion intelligent negotiation, the ability to be able to separate, the fact from the fiction, to focus on the process, to focus on the facts and not actually on the person. But it's easier said than done. I mean, so how do you do that? When you're in court, you look like arch enemies. You look like you're really kind of going at it. How are you able to compartmentalize that in your mind and then maintain cordial, even friendly relationships on the outside?
When you're in court, it really is, it's down to business, and you have a job to do. You're a professional, so you know what you have to do, and you do it. At the same time, focusing on the issues and kind of, it's hard to describe, but in my mind, I think a big thing, and I think this is something that serves people well in negotiation, even outside the litigation context, is to kind of pause, take a breath before you go into it, and step back and just kind of think, here's the situation, here's what I have to do. But at the end of the day, I'm dealing with human beings. And for me, it wasn't a problem to go hard at against my opponents in court and then to maintain good terms with them afterwards. I don't know. I find that meditation, believe it or not, has been a really big help in this respect. This idea of just taking 10 minutes a day to just kind of calm and focus on your thoughts. And if you do that for a prolonged period of time, then when you're in stressful emotional moments, you can actually catch yourself when the brain is running and kind of rein yourself in if necessary.
Fantastic. I mean, what you're talking about here is your own self-awareness. And, when we talk about emotion intelligent negotiation, that's the whole idea, the whole thrust is what's happening in what's the hidden side of negotiation, right? You learn all of the key strategies, all of the key frameworks, but we don't often talk about that stuff, right? How you feel and how the feelings that you have towards the negotiation actually have a direct effect on the outcome. And also what I love about what you've said, John, is not only are you aware of them, do you make yourself aware of them, but you've got some strategies in place to be able to channel them effectively. Can you say a bit more about that as a learned practice versus you being a natural anyway?
Sure. It's something that comes with practice, and nobody's perfect. I'm still learning. I still make mistakes, but I think in negotiation, I think that there's two things you want to keep in mind. One, you want to try and, to the extent you can, look at the issue being negotiated as dispassionately or as objectively as you can, and try to understand where the other side is coming from, what's important to them. But at the same time, and I think this is something that doesn't get as much play in this idea of emotional intelligent negotiation, is be aware of what's important to you. In some negotiations, as you know, there might be red lines for you, things that you cannot be willing to agree to. And if the other party insists, there are times when you just have to say, I'm sorry, this isn't going to work, and you walk away from the deal. I mean, I think a big part of emotional negotiation is knowing when to walk away.
Mm.
I don't know what you think about that. Oh, sure. In a thumbnail sketch, I'm from Canada. I'm a lawyer by training. I worked in one of Canada's biggest law firms in downtown Toronto doing corporate commercial litigation and environmental law for many years. 1998, I had a fantastic opportunity to come to Geneva, Switzerland, where I currently live. I did 17 years of work at the United Nations, the World Health Organization, doing some fascinating work in the Middle East and elsewhere. But about 10 years ago, I walked away from all of that to do full-time what I do now, which is public speaking, presentation skills training, giving keynotes, moderating events, helping people communicate more effectively.
Wow. So you can tell you're a public speaker. You can tell that just sounded so polished. But I'd like to see if we can let's rewind and maybe pick some meat off the bone
Sure.
in terms of where it started. So you said you've got 20 years experience as a lawyer in corporate litigation. Can you explain what that entailed? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have 7 principles of emotionally intelligent negotiation. One of the principles, principle 5, is never become overinvested in a specific outcome, and that's the reason for that, to ensure that you're not being blinded by just looking at a singular issue, and perhaps maybe missing out on some other issues that could probably end up being a better outcome for you. So there's something else I wanted to kind of dive into, which is when you are, for example, some of the negotiations that you've been involved with. I don't know whether you're open to share. The one that stands out for me is the the oil crisis, where you are negotiating the interests of the different parties. Are you able to share that?
Are you talking about, when I was working at the United Nations?
Yeah.
I mean, I can talk a little bit about it, of course. Sure.
Okay.
Uh,
Could you just give us the context as far as you can, the context and why you were brought in?
Sure. I mean, I mentioned that in 1998, I came to Geneva to work at the United Nations. People of a certain age at least, might remember when Iraq invaded Kuwait. In the 90s, they blew up the oil wells, and there was oil in the Gulf, and the oil well fires were burning, and it was a big, it was a disaster. And when the war ended, there was a commission set up within the United Nations to look at damages caused by the Gulf War. And I was head of the team of legal and scientific experts who are examining these multi-billion-dollar claims from countries in the region, not just Kuwait, but others, for damages caused to the environment and public health because of the oil fires, because of the oil in the Gulf. And it was, as a lawyer, it was a fascinating experience. I got to travel throughout the Middle East. I learned Arabic at the United Nations. And our role was to assess these claims. It wasn't so much negotiating with the claimants or with Iraq. It was rather to look at the claims and to look at Iraq's response to the claims, and then to make a recommendation to the tribunal. Are these claims well-founded? Are they not founded at all? Do they have a claim, but are they asking for too much? So that was the context of the work I was doing.
One of the key tenets of what we do with emotional intelligent negotiation is trying to shift how teams and companies negotiate internally. In terms of the silos that are built up, in terms of the way they have maybe competing priorities and how they handle that. And so, going a deep dive, you said you were working with the legal and scientific. So clearly you have maybe competing priorities, different directives there. How were you able, as the head, how were you able to bring these teams together, bring these individuals together in order to be able to provide a coherent report?
It worked very well. We had a very strong working relationship with the scientific experts, and it was something that I was used to from practicing environmental law back in Canada, when you had to bring in experts who would testify on behalf of your client to this or that environmental issue. And so it's really to use a North American football metaphor. You are the quarterback. You are in a way, the general marshaling the troops and making sure that, the people, the experts, give you the information that you're seeking, give you their best opinion, And then you take those facts, and then you hold them up against the law, and then you see, what the decision should be. And that's really what it comes down to. It's complex in the moment, but when you strip it all away, it's basically about getting the best, most accurate facts you can, looking at the law, and then seeing how the two come together in favor of your client or perhaps against your client.
I mean, John, I know you personally, so I can say you are an all-round good fellow, right?
Oh,
You really are. Never seen you lose your temper, never seen you in a bad mood, never heard you say a bad word about anyone.
wait, until I see the video of this podcast. So.
Well, I mean, there's always the first time, right? But I'm sure you've come across the listeners who are listening. I'm sure they've already began to pick up that you are a genuine, you nice guy. Where did this image of lawyers just being sharks? I'm still fascinated by it, because if I look at you and then look at the image that people have of especially litigation lawyers, they're just poles apart.
I mean, the caricature, it does fit some people. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lawyers, and not everybody is the same. I mean, there's the whole spectrum, but you could say that, I think, about any profession, cooks, engineers, doctors, there are some who are more empathetic, who get along better with people, and there are others who don't. So I don't know. I think it's just the nature of the image of the lawyer that comes through, like you said, through public media, through movies. I mean, people don't want to watch a movie about a corporate negotiation because it's not that exciting. They want to see Al Pacino in court yelling, "You're out of order, you're out of order." And that's the kind of thing.
You can't handle the truth, right?
You can't. That's Jack Nicholson. Yeah, you can't. No, yeah, Jack Nicholson. You can't handle the truth. But I tell you, if people want a really good movie about from lawyers, Al Pacino and Justice for All, that was a good movie. That was a good movie.
Is that must be an older movie, right?
It's an old movie, but it's an excellent movie.
10 years ago, you decided, right, that's it. I'm going to hang up my corporate lawyer boots, and I'm just going to become a public speaking expert. Tell us about that equinox moment for you.
What's interesting, it was actually when I came 98, that's when I hung up my corporate lawyer boots and I put on my international lawyer boots. And then after 17 years, working at the United Nations was a real privilege. I learned a lot, and I can now say that I have friends and former colleagues literally from around the world. But as the bureaucracy in the UN, it can weigh heavily, especially from people coming, as I did, from the private sector. And I enjoyed my time. I was fortunate because I had excellent experience and opportunities at the United Nations, the International Organization for Migration, the World Health Organization. But I reached a point where something that the American philosopher Henry David Thoreau said kept playing over and over in my mind. And he said, it's a great quote. He said, "I have many lives to live, and I've spent enough time on this one." So I decided, I said, as a lawyer, both internationally and also as a corporate lawyer in Canada, I had a lot of experience on my feet in front of tribunals, in front of commissions, at conferences. I liked speaking to people, and I would help people with their presentations, and they would always come to me for advice. And then I thought, well, maybe I can make a go out of this. And so I resigned. And what was interesting was that, to my surprise, at the time I was at the WHO, they came back to me and they said, "Would you consider working part-time?" And I thought, well, I've got a young family. There would be some stability. So we worked out an arrangement where I would work the first half of the week, Monday to midday Wednesday at the WHO. And then the rest of the week was mine. And then if there was a big conference at the WHO, I would work the whole week, and then I'd get the whole next week off. And it worked very well. And I did that for a year. It was a really interesting experience because it allowed me, I was building up my own work and I had the WHO. But at the end of the year, I realized I was feeling like I was imagine standing with a foot in one boat and a foot in another boat, and the boats are kind of drifting apart. And I realized that I'm never going to climb as high as I can in the UN half part-time, and I'm never going to achieve what I might achieve on my own part-time. And so I thought, you got to make the decision. And so, I went full on as an independent. It's like the magnifying glass, right? When you focus the light in one point, that's when it's strongest. So I did that, and no regrets at all.
Yeah.
I love what I do now.
I like that. I wonder how many other people feel that, right? That they have their foot in one boat and another on the other boat, and the two are drifting apart. I've definitely felt like that in my life, and I find, like you, going away, spending time, just dumbing out the noise, getting the noise out of the way, getting other people's expectations of you and aspirations for you, getting those out of the way, and then actually really focusing on what's important to you, kind of brings you to, almost like what your purpose is. Yours is it's now public speaking. Mine is negotiation, but they're under the same umbrella of communication, right?
Sure.
And so for you, why is this important?
Why is
Why? Yeah. You've jumped into the world of public speaking. What is it that you're bringing to this world, and why is it important to you to be able to commit the rest of your life to this as a pursuit?
Well, what? One of the privileges that I have doing as a public speaker, and it's the same privilege I had as a lawyer, is I get to work with a variety of clients. I get to look behind the curtain from everything from individuals to international organizations to multinational corporations, and you get to kind of see how things are done. And the people that I work with, I mean, they're motivated people, they're dynamic people, they've got fantastic ideas, products, services, and being able to help them bring that to a wider audience is something that's really fulfilling. Lee Iacocca, the former chair of the Chrysler Company, the guy who turned that car company around, he said, you can have the greatest ideas in the world, but if you can't get them across, your ideas aren't going to get you anywhere. And so whether it's in a presentation or a speech or a negotiation, if you are able to communicate your position clearly, memorably, in a way that gets people to understand your perspective, that's when you're going to have your biggest chance to make an impact, whether it's to an audience at a conference or whether it's to the person across the negotiation table from you, getting them to understand why a certain point is important for you.
Yeah, I think a similarity I see is with negotiation. When I'm coaching people or when I'm teaching, I find that people are really committed to the outcome. They feel really almost as if their identity is wrapped around the outcome. And I guess it's the same also for public speaking, right? You're standing in front of an audience, you're putting yourself in a position of vulnerability, and somehow you've managed to wrap your identity around the outcome of your presentation. Yeah. Do you find that also?
Yeah, I see a lot of people like that. And what I would tell them, I would say, don't tie your identity to the outcome, tie your identity to the process. Tie it to the process. Have in mind what your objective is, prepare as well as you can, deliver as well as you can, and then learn. Obviously, if it didn't go well, learn the lessons, but you got to let it go. What's the old saying that I'm sure you know, Tony? There are always three speeches for every one you give. There's the one you prepared, the one you gave, and the one you wish you would have given. Right? It's always the way. You can always look back, and it's hard because we're human beings. We have emotions, and you want to do a good job. And when things don't work out, you don't feel great. But if people can learn to invest themselves more in the process and do the best you can, and then at the end, you just got to let it go.
Yeah, the idea of putting yourself out there, for people to I guess criticize you, right? For people to make judgments on you. I guess that feeling can be quite a debilitating feeling, right? How do you coach people to handle that type of nerves, those type of emotions?
When I speak to them, about nerves, I always tell them, first of all, to realize that if they are on stage, it's because they have something to say. If they feel nervous, there's nothing wrong with them. It's completely normal. I mean, our brains evolved. We lived in groups of about 50 people because that's how people survive, sticking together. And if there's somebody new or we were alone, the amygdala kicks in and we feel this adrenaline, this danger. I tell them as well that if they have prepared as well as they possibly can to be kind to themselves, because what more can we have asked? If you have done everything you can to prepare for this presentation, for this negotiation, what more can we have asked? I mean, we can have asked. So you might as well enjoy it, because this is what you've worked for, this negotiation or this presentation. Beyond that, there are some physical exercises, some breathing exercises, some mindfulness exercises that we do, but it basically comes down to that. Prepare well, be kind with yourself. And I always tell people as well, especially at a conference, if you're going to speak at a conference where you don't know anybody, go early, first of all, to make sure everything is set up and working well, but then go say hello to the first few people who walk in. They're going to want to talk to you. Who are you? I'm the speaker. Oh, cool. They're going to want to talk to you. And as you talk to them, you realize something, and it's the same thing for every audience. They're just people. At the end of the day, They're just people. And they wake up in the morning and they've got bad breath and bad hair, and they've got hopes and dreams and stresses and nerves and worries, just like anybody else. And for me, at least, when I meet the people, when I've got a big speech to give or a presentation, it completely demystifies the whole thing. I'm not talking any longer to this conference or company ABC. I'm just talking to a room full of people.
John, I'm slightly offended that you might think I have bad hair when I wake up in the morning.
You and I don't have that problem, Tom.
Another thing I'd just like to just touch upon is your idea on we both do this. We both use role plays in our teaching. Some people just hate role plays. And they hate role plays because it puts them in a position of vulnerability, or they just don't believe in the idea of a role play. I'm a huge fan of role plays or real plays, whatever you want to call it. I'm a real fan of these because I think it's the easiest way and the quickest way to get you in a low stakes situation where you're actually practicing some of these things. What's your take on the use of role play in public speaking and negotiations?
Well, it's interesting. I do a little bit of role play. What I do more of, though, is improvisation. And this is one thing we haven't talked about, but I'm an improviser. I'm part of a group here in Geneva called the Renegade Saints. We do performances, but we also work with companies. We bring improv into companies because if people go on a website like Harvard Business Review or Forbes or Fast Company and you look improv for business skills, you'll find dozens, if not hundreds of articles. And so in these workshops, there's role play in the sense that we have people improvising, and it's fast and it's funny and it's crazy, but people learn things because after every game or after every exercise, we do a debrief. And I know what you mean about a lot of people feeling either nervous about it or skeptical. Whenever I do a workshop, and I've got a big one next week with a company, I know that there are some people who are skeptical. The people that I deal with, they tell me that. And I love that, because for me, it's always a challenge to kind of get them converted. And at the end of these workshops, everybody's always on board, because I think in improv, at least, and to an extent, I think also with the role playing that you do, it gives people a chance to do something that they haven't done in some cases for years, and that's play, role play. People, we got to be serious, and we're serious people, and we're business people, and we're on LinkedIn, and we're doing all these things that we have to do, but they forget the benefits of this idea of play. And I agree with you. In a training situation, it's a low stakes way to learn something and to prove your skills.
So, John, I'm going to go rogue here because this is totally off script, but let's just go for it anyway. Let's do a couple of minutes improv. I've never done improv live before, but just for the listeners to hear what improv is all about, what it does, let's just do a role play.
All right, let's tell you what. Well, here's a great improv exercise that I think is going to be also very useful for anybody who is into negotiations.
Okay.
Here are the rules. It's going to be very, very simple.
Okay.
You and I are going to tell a story.
Okay.
You're going to start by saying just one sentence.
Okay.
And I'm going to say a sentence, and then you're going to say, and we'll ping pong back and forth, 5, 6, 7 times.
Okay.
Okay? Now, it has to be a coherent story.
Okay.
It's going to be a once upon a time there was like a third person story, not in the first person. And we got to build a coherent story. But here's the extra rule.
Okay.
The last letter of your last word must be the first letter of my first word. So if you said, once upon a time, there was a fish. Fish ends in the letter H. My sentence has to begin with, how the fish got so big, nobody knew, or Harry was his name, anything beginning with H.
Okay.
Got it?
All right.
All right. So let's do this. Think of a profession, and I'll think of an emotion.
Okay. Do I tell you it?
Yeah, give me a profession.
A cake maker.
A cake maker. And my profession, my emotion was happiness. So we're going to tell the story of the happy cake maker. You start. Once upon a time, go.
Once upon a time, there lived a happy cake maker who enjoyed sitting on a lumpy wreck of sofa in his house.
Every day, he would wake up in the morning and think, what kind of new cake can I make for my customers today?
Yesterday, I made them a currant cake. Today, I think I'll go for a nice icing cake with some crusted almonds.
Suddenly, a report came over the news. All almond sales have been banned in the country, and the baker had a problem.
Meaning to give his mother a call, he accidentally dialed the local police station. They were alarmed.
Don't you ever call us for almonds again, screamed the policeman at the baker.
Reacting in such a cool, calm way, the baker walked down to the local swimming pool and decided to enlist the help of...
Of whom? Oh, I thought you froze there.
All right, time out.
No. But that's good. We'll stop it there. That's great. Well done. Now, here's the thing about this. It's a bit crazy. It's funny. But here's the thing. Did you find that you were actually listening right until the end of my sentence?
Oh, absolutely. I felt I had a real heightened sense of active listening. Yeah, absolutely.
This is it. And so, like, sometimes when we do this. This is an example of one of the games we might do in a training, and then we get people's feedback, and we say, how did this feel? And then and people say, yeah, it was hard, it wasn't easy. I say, no, but were you listening right until the end? And you see the light bulb go off.
Yeah.
And then I say, how many times, and I've been guilty of this in the past as well, that you're in a meeting and someone is talking and you get just enough information that you start thinking of what you want to say and they're still talking. And when you think about it, that's not very polite. I mean, when I speak, I hope people listen to the end. And so I should afford people that same courtesy. So I always tell people the lesson to take away from this is don't listen to respond, listen to understand. And I think in negotiations, I think this is a critical skill because we have so wrapped up in our mind what we want to say, what we want to get across, that often we miss something, we miss a clue, or we miss something really important, which could take the whole negotiation in a different, more constructive direction.
Yeah, I really like that. And you're absolutely right, because some of the innocuous bits of information that people say end up being really powerful key tenets of building, and creating value in a negotiation.
Well, you'll remember as well here's some mutual self-promotion in the book that you and I co-authored. with Paul and Zhuzha and Kevin, there's the story of the young prince who was sent off into the forest to listen for what, to try and listen to the things that were not so obvious.
Yeah, well, you brought up the book, John, so I did want to bring that in. We got together, myself, yourself, Paul, Susanna, and Kevin, and we met, if you remember, and we went to a quiet country house in the middle of Catalonia, and we locked ourselves away, and we said, we're not going to leave until we come up with an idea, something that we can create that we think will add value to the world. And if you remember, it took us like 3 days. We were going backwards and forwards. We were talking about doing workshops. We were talking about a Netflix movie, a Netflix series. Yeah. And eventually we came up with the idea of writing a book. And it's quite funny because the areas that I focus on are as I said, how we can shift the way companies negotiate internally, how we can use emotionally intelligent negotiation to build long-lasting relationships and partnerships, and how to deal with conflict within their teams. And there's so much of this that's been poured into the book. How much of what you know and what you've learned and picked up along the way did you actually put into the book? Well, firstly, you've got it there behind you. For our listeners who are watching on YouTube, you can see the book. For those of you who are listening on iTunes, it's called Enter Your Flow. And John, would you just like to maybe just give a quick plug of the book?
Sure. The subtitle is An Interactive Journey Toward Fulfillment and Happiness in Your Work Life. And what we set out to do was we made the book. I flipped it so people can see again. There's fantastic illustrations by Kevin, but there's also lots of exercises. There are moments it's a combination of business book / storytelling / exercise book where people have to take time out and do. I think we have I counted it once, it's almost 50 exercises in the book that get people to stop, step back, think about some big picture items like, what's my relationship to my place of work? What's my relationship to my colleagues? Am I happy there? What are my values? How do my values fit in or not with what the company wants? And so it's, I'm really proud of it. And I think you are as well, because it's, when you go through it, it's everybody I know who has read it and worked through it, they come back and they say it's really given them some perspective on their relationship to work and whether they're happy where they are, which is great, whether they need to change within the same company or organization, or in some cases, as it was my case, you need to move somewhere else.
And I think there's another. You've got a game, Rhetoric. You a few years ago, you came up with, I think, the first public speaking board game, right? Rhetoric, and it's now on digital form.
Yes, with my friend Florian Muck, we created a board game where they're over there, where you roll the dice and you move the men around the field and you pick up cards or you get asked questions. And essentially at every turn, the player has to stand up and give a 1-minute speech to the other players about some topic. And so we turned it into an app, which is a multilingual app. And yeah.
Well, to our listeners, I think you've probably been able to pick up that John is a real all-rounder. John, it actually reminds me of the old school kind of Greek philosophers who were good at philosophy, good at maths, good at science, and they just had brilliant minds, and they were able to use that curious, inquisitive nature across all different stratas of education. And John, you definitely strike me as that individual. When we were doing the book,
yeah,
I remember you were the wordsmith, right? In the book, you were the one who we would spend hours arguing about the structure of a paragraph and whether we should dot this I or cross this T, and I guess that was the lawyer of you coming into play.
That's the lawyer coming in, yeah.
Yeah. But also there was a real red thread running through you, which is something that you really care, right? I asked you, why is this important to you? I think you and I share this same passion. We genuinely want to help people. We genuinely want to see people do better in their communication. There's a strong belief that you and I have is that great communication gives you access to greater opportunities. And if the better we can help people communicate, whether it's negotiating, whether it's public speaking, the better we can help people do that, the more opportunities, the better quality opportunities and better quality relationships they have.
Yeah, well, that's very kind of you, Tony. Thank you. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I was thinking as you were talking, when you strip it all away, whether it's giving a big presentation or a speech or negotiating or any kind of communication, it all comes down basically, how do we interact with each other? And I think it is entirely possible in today's world to interact in a decent, respectful way with other people, even when you're in an adversarial position to them. And it acting decently and respectfully with people also includes yourself. I mean, you have to have self-respect. You have to be decent to yourself as well. And I think if people, and it's hard, and I mean, I don't need to tell you, especially now we're January 2025, we all know the different political shifts that have taken place, and you just have to go online, social media, to see the level of the discourse and how low, in some places at least, that it has sunk. But I think that there's still value in being decent to each other. And I think ultimately it pays dividends for the people who do act that way.
Well, John, thank you very much. We've come to the end of our conversation. I've really, really enjoyed this, and it's been a pleasure. Just before we go, could you just share what is it that you're working on right now that you're really passionate about, that our listeners maybe can jump in and maybe help you? And how can they find you if they're looking for you to learn more about what you do?
Well, most immediately, I have an improv show tonight with my group, the Renegade Saints, in downtown Geneva. So if anybody's in Geneva, and this is going to air many days after the show, so that's the most immediate thing. Beyond that, I've got a couple of big business trips coming up to Finland, to the United States, elsewhere, working on my next book. That's in progress. Just, trying to stay in shape as well, and, meditating, Stoic philosophy, all that kind of good stuff. If people want to get in touch, the best way would be to go to my website. It's www.mannerofspeaking, all one word, MANNER of speaking.org, O-R-G. I liked the name years and years ago when I set up my blog, and .com wasn't available, so I went with .org, and so it's .org. You can also find me on LinkedIn for anybody who's interested.
John Zimmer, thank you for joining us today on Empathy at the Table.
My pleasure, Tony. Thanks for having me.